So today we're diving into something that you might not think would be that interesting. Clauses.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going deep on grammar today, but before you click away thinking that this is going to be some kind of boring lecture,
Yeah.
I promise you it's way more interesting than you might think. Because honestly, understanding clauses is like having a superpower
Yeah.
when it comes to like writing and speaking.
Right.
And to help us kind of decode this superpower,
Okay.
we're looking at this podcast, Easy English Grammar,
Mm-hmm.
and their episode, Clauses for Beginners,
Oh, cool.
is our guide for this deep dive.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great place to start. And I think they lay out the basics really well.
Yeah.
They define a clause as a group of words with a subject,
Right.
which is like the who or the what doing something,
Uh-huh.
and a verb, which is the action itself.
So simple.
Right.
Yet so powerful.
Yeah.
It's amazing how those two basic ingredients can create so much, variety of meanings.
Exactly.
Like,
It seems so simple,
yeah,
but you can get a lot of mileage out of it.
the chef cooked.
Yeah.
Like, chef is our subject and cooked is our verb.
Exactly. And you know what's so fascinating is that
Right.
like once you know what to look for, you start seeing these like subject verb pairs like everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like
Oh, yeah.
you've suddenly gained the ability to like see the underlying structure of
Yeah.
any sentence.
Yes.
Like you've got X-ray vision for grammar now.
I love that. Okay, so we've got our basic building blocks.
Right.
But then the podcast takes it a step further. And they start talking about independent versus dependent clauses.
Yeah.
And I love how they use this analogy of adults and kids to
Yeah.
describe this.
Really helpful.
So helpful.
Way to visualize it.
Yeah, so independent clauses, like adults can stand on their own.
Mm-hmm.
They express a complete thought.
Yep.
But dependent clauses are like children.
Yeah.
They need some support
Right.
from that independent clause.
They need to hold someone's hand.
Yeah, exactly. Across the street.
So like the chef cooked
Mm-hmm.
is independent.
Yeah.
It's a complete thought.
Totally.
But if we add
Okay.
because she was hungry,
Yeah.
now it's dependent.
Whoa.
Now we need more.
Yeah.
Like, what does she cook?
Right. You're like, wait a minute.
Yeah,
Now I need more information.
exactly.
It's like a cliffhanger.
Yes.
That dependent clause is like, dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
What happens next?
Okay. And that's where conjunctions come in.
Right.
Right? These little words.
They're fun.
Like, but because. So
right.
the podcast talks about how they're like the glue that holds clauses together.
Yeah, like the connective tissue.
Exactly.
Of sentences.
Yeah. But what's often overlooked is how these like seemingly insignificant words
Yeah.
actually have a huge impact
Mm-hmm.
on the meaning and the flow of your writing.
Like choosing although instead of because
Yes.
can completely change the emphasis of a sentence. Like they're these tiny but mighty tools
That's a great way to put it.
that we can use to really shape our sentences and create all these different effects.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
So like, she cooked although she was tired.
Yeah?
Has a very different feeling
Yeah.
than like, she cooked because she was tired.
Totally different vibe.
Totally different vibe.
Right? Like, although suggests a contrast. It's
Yeah.
like she's pushing through,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
She's like, I'm tired, but I'm going to do this anyway.
Yes.
Whereas, because it's just like, no, well, I'm hungry, so I'm going to eat.
Yeah. Like it was just this very basic need.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got these different types of clauses
Okay.
and these little connector words
Mm-hmm.
that can change the whole feeling of a sentence.
Yeah.
But like, why should someone care? Why does
Yeah.
this matter?
That's a good question.
Like if you're not a professional writer.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think the answer is that, like, understanding clauses helps you communicate more effectively
Yeah.
in every aspect of your life.
Mhm.
Because think about it, like, whether you're writing an email,
Mhm.
having a conversation, or
Right.
even just reading a book,
Yeah.
you're encountering clauses constantly.
That's true.
Like, they're everywhere.
yeah.
And so, like,
It's not just about writing grammatically correct sentences. It's
Yeah.
about like understanding how to use language to really express yourself clearly and persuasively.
exactly. It's
Yeah.
about becoming a more, like, conscious and skillful communicator.
Yes. I love
You're not just like throwing words out there.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm going to use these tools
Yeah.
to really get my point across
Love it.
in the best way possible.
Yeah.
So welcome back to our deep dive into the fascinating world of clauses.
Yes.
We've covered a lot of ground already,
I know, right?
but there's still so much more to explore.
I'm excited. In the last episode, we talked about how clauses are like these building blocks of sentences.
Right? Like the bricks and mortar.
Yeah, exactly. But now I'm kind of curious, like, How do these building blocks actually like fit together
Okay.
to create these different types of sentences?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's really like a key part of understanding how to like wield the power of clauses.
Okay.
Easy English grammar touched on this a bit,
Yeah.
explaining how you can combine these clauses
Right.
to create these different sentence structures, each with its own like unique effect.
Okay, so let's break that down a little bit. They mention simple sentences,
Yeah.
and I'm guessing those are, well, simple?
They are, yeah. A simple sentence is like a solo act.
Okay.
It consists of just one independent clause.
Uh-huh.
Think of it as like a straightforward statement,
Okay.
like the sun is shining.
Got it. Short, sweet, to the point.
Exactly.
But how do we build from there?
Well, think of compound sentences as like a duet.
Okay.
They bring together two independent clauses,
Okay.
giving them equal weight
Okay.
and connecting them with what's called a coordinating conjunction,
Yeah.
like and, but, or.
So instead of just saying the sun is shining, we could say the sun is shining and the birds are singing.
Exactly.
Now we've got these two complete thoughts
Right.
working together.
Yeah, you're creating this like sense of balance and flow,
Mm-hmm.
allowing these two ideas to like coexist harmoniously
Yes.
within a single sentence.
And I love that. Okay, but things get even more interesting, I think, when we
Yeah.
introduce dependent clauses into the mix,
Oh, yeah.
right? Those kids that need a little bit of support.
Right.
The podcast mentioned complex sentences. Is that where those come in?
That is exactly where they come.
Okay.
Complex sentences are like a family unit. Okay. Combining an independent clause with one or more dependent clauses.
Mm-hmm.
This creates like a hierarchy of information,
Okay.
with the independent clause acting as like the main event,
Okay.
and the dependent clauses providing like context or detail.
So building on our previous example, we could say, although the sun is shining, the birds are singing a melancholic tune. Now, the main focus is still on those birds singing, but the dependent clause adds this layer of complexity,
Right.
introducing this contrast between the bright sunshine and the somber melody.
Exactly. It's like adding a plot twist to your sentence,
Oh.
introducing an element of surprise or intrigue.
Yeah.
And this is where you can really start to like play with language,
Mm-hmm.
crafting sentences that are not only grammatically sound, but also like stylistically sophisticated.
This is blowing my mind a little bit.
It's pretty cool, right?
I never realized how much depth and nuance you could create just by like playing around with the arrangement of these clauses.
It's remarkable, and it opens up this whole new world of possibilities for writers.
Yeah.
Like, think about how authors use these different sentence structures
Yeah.
to create different effects.
Mm-hmm.
Like, a short, simple sentence can convey a sense of like urgency or impact,
Yeah.
while a long, complex sentence can build suspense or create a more lyrical flow.
It's like they're composing music
Yeah,
with their sentences using clauses like notes and phrases
that's a beautiful analogy.
to create this specific rhythm and melody.
I love that. And the more you pay attention to these structures,
Yeah.
the more you'll start to appreciate like the artistry involved
Yeah.
in crafting truly engaging prose.
So if we connect this back to what we were talking about earlier about how understanding clauses empowers you to communicate more effectively,
Yeah.
it's not just about choosing the right words, it's also about arranging them strategically within these different sentence structures.
Absolutely. It's about understanding the tools at your disposal
Yeah.
and using them deliberately to achieve your desired effect.
Right.
You wouldn't use a hammer to screw in a light bulb,
Right.
and you wouldn't use a simple sentence when a complex sentence would better convey your meaning.
That's such a great point. It makes me wonder, are there any like common pitfalls
Oh,
that we fall into when it comes to using clauses?
For sure.
Any mistakes that we should be aware of as we're, trying to master this?
That's a really insightful question, one that I think deserves its own dedicated exploration.
Okay.
So let's dive into that further in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds like a plan. I'm already starting to see clauses everywhere I look, and I'm eager to learn even more about how to use them effectively in my own writing. All right, we're back and ready to wrap up our deep dive into this world of clauses.
Okay.
We've talked about the different types,
Yeah.
how they fit together to make sentences,
Right.
but I'm really curious about those common pitfalls you mentioned earlier.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like I'm starting to grasp these concepts, but I could definitely see myself making some mistakes along the way.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. What are some of the most common traps that people fall into?
I think one of the biggest ones
Okay.
is the dreaded run-on sentence.
Run-on sentence.
Yeah. This happens when you try to cram too many independent clauses together
Okay.
without proper punctuation or conjunctions.
Hmm.
It's like a train with too many cars and no brakes.
Ouch. I
Ugh.
can imagine that getting messy.
Yeah, it can get pretty messy.
Can you give us an example?
Sure, imagine a sentence like,
Yeah.
the chef cooked the meal, it was delicious, everyone loved it.
Okay.
It's a mouthful, right?
Yeah.
There are actually 3 independent clauses crammed together there,
Yeah.
creating this confusing jumble of ideas.
It's like trying to fit too much furniture into a small room.
Exactly.
It just feels cluttered and overwhelming.
Totally. Yeah.
So how do we fix that?
Well, there's a few ways to fix this. You could break it into separate sentences.
Okay.
Like, the chef cooked the meal, it was delicious, everyone loved it.
Okay.
Or you could use conjunctions to, like, connect the clauses more smoothly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the chef cooked the meal, and it was so delicious that everyone loved it.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. So it's not just about avoiding grammatical errors.
Yeah.
It's also about making sure that our sentences are clear and easy to follow.
Absolutely. And another common mistake is, like, using dependent clauses incorrectly,
Okay.
often resulting in something called a sentence fragment.
Sentence fragment.
This happens when a dependent clause is left standing on its own without an independent clause to complete the thought.
Ah. So like our earlier example, because she was hungry.
Exactly.
This is like a story that abruptly ends before the climax.
Right. It leaves you hanging. You're like, what happened?
Yeah.
To fix this, you need to attach that dependent clause to an independent clause, creating a complete sentence.
Yeah.
Like, because she was hungry, the chef cooked a delicious meal.
Okay, so mastering clauses, it's not only about knowing the rules,
Right.
it's about understanding how to use them to craft these sentences that are both grammatically correct and stylistically effective.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's about using the right tool for the right job,
Okay.
choosing the clause structures that best convey your intended meaning and create that desired effect.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes to the power of clauses.
I'm glad to hear that.
I used to think grammar was just about following this set of rigid rules,
Yeah.
but now I see it as more of a creative tool.
It's like learning the rules of a game, so you can start bending them to your advantage.
Yes.
Understanding clauses gives you the freedom to experiment with language, to create sentences that are not only correct, but also engaging, persuasive, and even beautiful.
That's such a great way to put it.
Right. It can be fun.
Yeah. Okay. So as we wrap up, what's one key takeaway you want to leave our listeners with?
I would say don't be afraid to play with clauses.
Okay.
Experiment with different structures, try out different conjunctions, and see how you can use these building blocks
Yeah.
to create sentences that truly reflect your voice and your style.
That's great advice. And remember, even if you make a few mistakes along the way, that's all part of the learning process.
Exactly. The more you practice, the more confident you'll become in
Yeah.
wielding the power of clauses. And who knows?
Yeah.
You might even find yourself falling in love with grammar along the way.
I think I already am. Well, that's a wrap on our deep dive into clauses. We hope you've enjoyed the journey and that you'll come back for our next linguistic adventure.